11 o'clock on a Friday night. What are we doing in the Steam Zone, man?
We had to wait for some airspace, right?
We had to wait. It was a busy day out in Alaska. We had to wait for some planes to get out of American airspace. We had to wait for the president to get underway. What the heck's been going on?
I don't know. They got cots for the whole team, the Russian team. Well, it's fish season, right? So all the hotels are booked. It's we're doing it live. Is kind of the attitude.
This is unbelievable. You look at this. You have Russian journalists on social media complaining about their American accommodations. We got somebody talking about, oh, we have to use our own power banks to charge our phones. They were very upset about this, Ben. Very, very upset. This was a fascinating visit. Bless you. Vladimir Putin in Alaska, formerly Russian territory. Folks forget, long, long time ago. Sold to the United States.
Don't tell them that. You're going to get us in trouble.
Yeah, there was all these rumors. Maybe Putin was coming to contest the claims, territorial sovereignty of Alaska. I don't think so. Look at this. As they're walking to the podium, President Trump and the American entourage arrange a B-2 flyover right on Putin's head. I mean, this
the
is
question I want to know is who won the handshake?
Who won the handshake? Well, I did see. Who was that? I think Marco got got jerked around. I don't know. There was a little bit of tug of war. Bottom line, Ben, this kind of ends a little bit inconclusively. What's your take on? Is President Trump going to meet President Putin in Moscow? Is that really the next step here?
Yeah, I think we're gonna forget this happened. You remember when he met? Remember when we went to North Korea and they did the whole step over in North Korea and back over into South Korea? I'm willing to believe anything, but I think right now the status quo is the status quo. So until something crazy changes, this is just a fun detour.
Ben is bearish on Alaska diplomacy. I don't know, Ben. Hillary Clinton apparently earlier today, said if Trump negotiates peace in Ukraine, she's going to be nominating him for Nobel Peace Prize.
Okay. Well, trust in her then.
Stay tuned, everybody. The Steam Zone won't let you miss breaking news on Trump-Putin diplomacy. Well, Ben, if we leave our friends over in Russia and move to another American competitor, China. China's been in the news this week. There's a couple of interesting tabs on China. Let's dive in.
Let's do it.
Okay. So
Great podcast.
First up, there was an interesting conversation. Ryan Evans, War on the Rocks, this week with two former officials. Brad Carson, now at this organization called Americans for Responsible Innovation. Maybe a little tied to some of the industry lobbying. We're no accusations here. And Lisa Tobin, who was former CIA and NSC staffer. And they were talking about something in particular, which is that there was some big news in the past week. The U.S. has relaxed sanctions, relaxed export controls on NVIDIA's H20 chips. These are a competitor to, or an alternative to H100, H200 that are sold here in the U.S. that had been export restricted. Now, all of a sudden, the U.S. has said, it's okay, NVIDIA, you can export those chips to China. We just want a percentage of the revenue. What'd you make of this, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the podcast, great stuff. I think really some convincing arguments there about why this is so dangerous for America, right? That this can seem under the veil of just, typical capitalism, that get our stuff out there, get our software out there, get everyone hooked on America. But I think there are real dangers about us losing the race. And every edge, and this is an edge, it really seems like every edge matters while you're racing to anything. And so, Michael Jordan wouldn't give his opponents an inch, right? That's why he's the GOAT. And we believe that on the Steam Zone, right? We're not LeBron guys, we're Jordan fans here. The same thing here, right? You cannot give them an inch. And it feels like this is not a win-win trade. This is a lot of cost to us.
Yeah, I think the whole hypothesis that, we want to get them hooked on American tech. Lisa, in particular, kind of goes after that head on in this conversation. Says, look, this is a failed argument. We've been arguing this for 2 to 3 decades now. And if we have not started to believe China when they say that their intent is to nationalize or to onshore their own production, we're out of our minds. We got our heads up our asses. The reality is China they want to take, it's not that they just copy and steal, but if given the opportunity, they will absolutely use the information and the material that we provide them to leapfrog. And so, H20 inference chip, not about training the models, about using the models. We saw
but an important part of the process,
super
right?
important part of the process. Yeah. This was the big change that we saw with DeepSeek R1. There was a lot of innovation around just using what they had access to kind of catch up to the U.S. in domains that we were not necessarily kind of aware of. And so the idea that in any way this is going to make it better, that maybe, one thing that folks were maybe looking for was, is this a two-way trade, Ben? Like, are we getting concessions from China on rare earth minerals as part of some broader trade deal? So kind of the raw inputs to semiconductors and to other manufacturing processes. And the answer at this point appears to be no. It doesn't look like we got any concessions. So this wasn't really a trade deal. It was just kind of a unilateral move.
We got cash, right? That's cash is king.
Well, in effect, we got tax revenue, really, is what we got. That we got an additional levy on the export of these. So the question is this a national security concern, or is this just ham-handed kind of business? Because if it's national security, 15% of the revenue ain't going to do it, Ben. If it's just
and what
about
confuses me about all of it is there's a backlog, there's excess demand for these chips within America and certainly within our allied nations. So I don't really understand why. I would get it if they'd had extra stock and they just didn't have somewhere to put them. Then okay, maybe there's an argument that you need to get rid of them. This is business, but they've got the business. There's excess demand.
This, we don't want to point fingers. We don't know. We're not in the room, but it does seem that some of the personal Jensen Huang diplomacy with the Trump administration may have something to do with this decision, and just kind of bringing him around. There've been rumors he's been saying, "Hey, you're going to kill my business." Now, is this what's going to kill a $4 trillion company? I don't think so, but that doesn't mean that the CEO should not, use all of the levers at his disposal to kind of advocate for his interests. The question is this in America's interest? And at this point, I don't really see it.
But speaking of America's interest, it seems like there's some risky stuff coming out of California, Noah. Are we worried about some of the spies at Stanford? What's your take on this? What's going on there?
Okay, so what Ben's talking to, another conversation on the Dynamis podcast this week about some research that took place, actually done by Stanford students, Elsa Johnson, Garrett Malloy, a little while ago for the Stanford Review, in which it turns out that there are somewhere between 20 to 50,000 Chinese students in the United States that receive funding from this organization called the China Scholarship Council out of Beijing. The requirement there is that they maintain some of this contact with people that they call handlers, who actually are getting intelligence reporting from these universities. Ben, I don't know if you studied abroad. Some of my friends studied abroad. You had to write papers. You had to go write about, maybe the Italian Renaissance or the quality of the bacalao in Spain. But I'm not so sure about intelligence reporting on the activities of students in our home country. This one is disturbing. It was disturbing when the story broke. It was disturbing again when we see this here. So you've got what China is doing at home in their country. Now you also see what China is doing here in our country. It kind of feels like we're playing two different games, man. Like, we're here saying, hey, take our chips, we want the business. And China's like, hey, America, you like foreign students? Awesome, we'll fund them to come to your country. And oh, by the way, we're also going to ask them to report on exactly what it is that you're doing. China seems to recognize they're in a competition. Do we?
Yeah, I think the next question then is, how do we win, right? And the answer isn't necessarily, I don't think it's close the door, don't let Chinese students here, because that's our strength, right? Our strength is that we have everybody wanting to come here. Our ability to be the place, to be the all-star team that everyone wants to go join up and be on the winning team is how we're going to win in the long run. So glad I'm not a policymaker here because you've got to thread a fine line and figure out and figure out how to navigate the tough decisions of who's doing this and who isn't. And I'm sure there's cool drop offs that we'll see in a spy movie in 20 years, but they're probably hard to catch.
It's you're absolutely right. Well, we talked about this a little bit last week with the Intel CEO. It's like there's some that we want the brain drain to come to America. We want these folks here. When there's family members and things like that overseas, it's always going to create entanglements. So I don't know, Ben. I don't have the policy solution, but maybe this is the first of the Steam Zone call for startups, people. If you've got good ideas on how we can bring in citizens from the People's Republic of China and protect them here to not have to report back to their handlers in Beijing, or to make it safe for us as Americans and American companies to employ these folks without trade secrets being stolen or intellectual property being duplicated. We want to hear them. Bring them to the Steam Zone. Call for.
We can't promise you funding, but we'll hype you up.
We can. Ben got some. He's got more sway than he wants to let on. There's some funding somewhere. It may not be from these two guys until Steam Zone goes worldwide, but we will help you out. We'd love to hear from you. Maybe we'll have you on the program. So reach out if you're working on something to make it safe for American companies to employ Chinese nationals. All right, that's enough of that. Let's close that tab. Speaking of, Ben, things that we are doing to recognize the competition that the United States may be in. The FDA this week launched a new program to bring additional drug manufacturing back on shore. Now, this is another one. It is shocking, I think, to see for a lot of folks that more than half of the pharmaceuticals actually distributed in the United States are manufactured abroad. And so only 11% of companies that are producing pharmaceutical ingredients are actually based in the United States. The majority, or at least a significant plurality, are in, once again, China and India. So, what do we think of the FDA's new program?
I think it's a great program. I think the key question actually isn't getting the drugs to be made here, right? Because if it's more expensive, that's going to hurt Americans. That's going to hurt the American citizen who's going to pay more for these drugs. But the key question is, if something goes wrong, do we have the capability to scale up? Do we have the ability to meet the demand if it comes and it's shut off and the supply is shut off? So less interested in moving it over here. If that is the answer, okay, that's the answer. But more interested in how do we build out that capability so that we can do it as needed, on demand.
I think that's right. So it's that stockpile. It's the ability to do it. It's not saying we must, but it's knowing that we can without a huge lag. I even remember PPE during COVID. Remember that when we had the masks and the gloves and stuff? It was like there was no capability to make even the material here in the U.S. You can only imagine on the drug side. It's just part of this broader trend of reindustrialization.
Can we repurpose our Zyn factories to go do this? Perfect. Well, the Zyn boys are going to have to go without, but we'll get the essential drugs. I think we're okay.
What do they call nicotine? It's a zootropic or something? I don't know. There's some drug-sounding word for it. All right. That's enough drugs for us. There's no drugs in the Steam Zone. Closing that tab. Ben.
Uh-oh.
Ben, it's been a big week. A return of our old friends. I don't even know how to segue here other than to say we've been excited to talk about this all week, baby. The SPACs are back, baby.
We are back, baby. We are fucking back. We're back.
Yeah.
Classic. We are back. We are back.
What do we see this week? Firefly Aerospace going public. We've got reusable rocket maker, Innovative Rocket Technologies, getting ready to go public via a SPAC, BPGC. Wilbur Ross, the old Commerce Secretary, getting in the mix. It's his SPAC. Last month, we had a report from Seraphin Space saying that investment in space startups soared to $3.1 billion, up almost $1 billion from this time last year. And then just a day or two ago, Ben, Merlin Labs, Boston-based AI pilot company, software company, aerospace autonomy, going public via a SPAC. SPACs are back, baby. What do you think? You bullish? You buying some SPACs?
Oh my God, this is the worst nightmare. Be careful out there, our retail investor friends. Just put your money in the S&P 500. Don't do this trash. There is no such thing as a free lunch. Just because some guy on Twitter says you're going to be rich, it doesn't actually mean you're going to make it. Actually see his bank account certified. He's bullshitting you. This is a bubble. This is bad. We've seen how this goes before. Maybe Chamath will walk away with a bunch of money, but you are going to get hurt. Stay away. This is not a problem being solved, right? This is just asking for issues. We've got ways to go public. You can direct list. You can do your traditional IPO. We've got private capital markets that are pretty efficient. This is just a way to bypass processes that mostly work. I'm unimpressed and worried.
Well, so, Ben, Figma went public a few weeks ago. The stock was clearly way undervalued, shot up a huge number in the day. So I think it's fair to be skeptical of the IPO market. It's fair to be skeptical
Totally.
of bankers, right? What I think is unclear is SPACs were hot, and then they went away, and we kind of say, hey, that's kind of scammy. Why now? Like, what does it mean that these things are back now? What should that tell us about where we're at as a market?
Here's the beautiful thing. If you just buy the S&P 500 dollar cost average, you don't have to worry about that. It's a tried and true thing. Listen to Warren Buffett, who would tell you to buy the S&P 500 unless this is your full-time job. So this is how you make money. Buy the market. Don't take these unnecessary risks. Be smart. Do not do this. Don't SPAC. You don't have to worry about whether this is a bubble or not. You don't have to worry about it. It's fraud. You just don't play in these dangerous areas because they don't make sense. Just because you have a bad cook once and you have a bad meal doesn't mean you turn off eating. So if we can talk about a bad IPO, and jury's still out on the Figma stuff, but you could say, okay, the bankers screwed up there. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. That doesn't mean you stop eating just because you get one bad meal, right? So just anecdotes don't make us change systems. And there's probably good systematic reform we can do, but we've just seen again and again SPACs fail. This isn't experimentation. This has already been experimented and done badly.
Bill Gurley has a lot of thoughts on public markets and IPOs. I don't think he is a fan of SPACs. We know Ben's not buying the SPACs. If you want to come on and defend SPACs, we'd love to hear it. Hit us up. Steam Zone's open for business. That's enough SPAC for one day, Ben. Let's close that thing out. What else we got?
Ooh, here comes the cavalry. So everyone's claiming to invest in the U.S. You can hear my skepticism, Noah. To sell me on what the story is first.
Another week, another big company announcing a big investment in America, baby. GE Appliances this time, saying they're going to move some manufacturing from China.
Is this a 30 Rock episode?
It's not that I can tell. Some from China, some from Mexico. Alec Baldwin seems firmly situated in the U.S. I don't know. Maybe he's been in Mexico. I think his wife maybe is from Mexico, or there's some controversy around that. Let's not touch that one. Anyway, I think $3 billion investment from GE Appliances. This is on the wake. It is right on the heels of Apple coming to Washington and Tim Cook presenting Donald Trump with that gold-plated gift, right? Famously, Tim Cook in the White House pledging $100 billion investment. Ben, these are like eye-popping numbers, right? Everybody seems to want to talk about how they are investing big dollars in American jobs and American manufacturing. That's fantastic, right? Like, I think we are big time bulls on onshoring, reindustrialization, making things here in the U.S. Absolutely. The question, as you alluded to, is this like the IDIQ of promises here? Is this a big ceiling but no funding type of announcement? Like, what does it mean? We saw, famously, I think it was the first week of this administration. The AI initiative from Jensen at NVIDIA, from Sam Altman at OpenAI, from the SoftBank, right, claiming hundreds of billions, if not, it was an insane amount of money that I think on Stargate that they were announcing, and then they've rolled that back and said, actually, we don't have all that money, or it's not there yet. And Elon did his little victory lap. The jury's still out, TBD. But we're seeing a lot of big announcements, a lot of positive press, a lot of photo ops with the president. And then to your point, how are we going to manage, how are we track and follow through here?
Yeah, I think this is I hammer this home every week, but the details matter, right? So a couple kind of buckets of questions I have across this whole deal, right? And I think it really starts was, are they going to invest it? If they are, was this already planned and has something changed? And then let's see if it actually happens. What are the actual terms? So did they say they're going to do it and they're not going to come through? What happens if they don't come through? And what is the actual agreement? Where's the money coming from? When? What is the actual commitment? It's always fun to give a big check, but I want to see if the actual little check, probably not even a check, it's probably a wire or something, actually transfers, accounts.
Well, speaking of people who come through, let's go ahead and let's close this one out. We'll keep an eye on it for you. So Ben, speaking of some folks who do come through, who do follow through, what a couple of large defense companies have to do with sports car racing.
I want to go fast. Hey, get him a suit. Hurry up.
Steam Zone fans know that I am a big F1 fan. Not as much NASCAR. I'm cool with NASCAR. It's not hate, but we know I'm all in on the F1. I'd argue it's an American sport too, but obviously NASCAR has the American vibe.
So, what are we going to call this thing?
And so Anduril is named an official sponsor for NASCAR San Diego weekend, right? So this is exciting. This, look at the Anduril logo in the car. It looks awesome. Look at all the troops. Rah, rah. It looks amazing. But let's get into a little bit of the drama. So, okay, cool sponsorship. There are a lot of sponsorships. We've got Trey Stevens coming out and attacking Palantir. They're calling F1 Euro sissies. I beg to differ, all right? We know that even though Palantir did sponsor F1, sure, they sponsored Scuderia Ferrari. Hope I pronounced that correctly. Ferrari, we know they're there. Great team, right? One of the legendary team in F1 and motorsports writ large. But come on. F1, we're about to get an American team in March 2026. We got the F1 Cadillac team, baby. They're going to be headquartered in the United States of America, and that is the second American F1 team. We have Haas, who, not performing as well as we might think, but they're moving up. I think there's potential, and once we get more excitement in America, we're going to get more sponsorship dollars. So I'd love to see Anduril sponsoring Haas, and we've got maybe Palantir sponsoring Cadillac, and we've got some good American competition, but this is, come on, Trey. I'm sure it's all in good fun with his buddies over there, but F1 is a great sport. So I don't like the hate.
I don't think there's any hate. I think this is good-natured ribbing from a guy who made a lot of money from his early days at Palantir. And I think Trey actually said, it's a joke. Relax, everyone. But I think the bigger, first of all, if you don't have any idea what Ben is talking about, you can join me on this corner of the Steam Zone, which is like, I don't watch racing. I wish I did. It's not been a thing. Palantir's been a sponsor for years. Anduril now getting into the mix. I think, Ben, the bigger question is, why are these companies, other than the fact that they've got a lot of freaking cash, why are these companies sponsoring sports car races now?
I think there's two questions there, which is, there's the movement of racing, right? Like racing is getting more popular. And so just that's what you do as a brand. You go to popular sports. And then I think it's a different moment for defense tech, right? Where, defense things are cool again. So they're making branding moves while that's going on. So those are kind of the two levers I'm thinking about.
All right. Well, if you are a NASCAR fan and you're going to be at the Race the Base in San Diego, you will be surrounded by the Anduril Mafia. So enjoy that. All right, let's go ahead and close that one out. So, Ben, that brings us to our next topic, which is, we've talked about, there's been a surprising amount of eugenics talk on this program. It was only a week or two ago that the famous Sydney Sweeney jeans commercial made its first appearance here on Steam Zone, and I think it's made its way back just about every week since. This week, Ben, we've got another story about genetic modification, this time out of Silicon Valley. What's going on? What should people know about this?
Yeah, this is for the Gattaca fans out there. I don't know if you guys remember 1997, Gattaca, Ethan Hawke, Uma Thurman, great movie.
Genetics. What can it mean? The ability to perfect the physical and mental characteristics of every unborn child.
Of genetic engineering to choose. Highly recommend. Watch now. This is a great way to spend, finish the Steam Zone, finish the episode first. Once you're done, go rent Gattaca, Amazon Prime, or Apple TV. I'm sure it's on one of those streamers, maybe HBO Max. But after that, I think you'll leave the movie with a really good question of, is this the right thing to do? And so what is actually happening here, right? People, tech execs, your crazy people in Silicon Valley are paying a lot of money to customize, to manipulate, to get the best embryos, to get the best babies ever. And best is a complicated word. What does that even mean? That's a good question. That's go see Gattaca, because you can then debate that question. That's the essential question of the movie, right? But this is like, Gattaca called this 30 years ago, right? So, there is this growing obsession of having smarter babies, but I have a lot of questions. Is this going to create two classes of people, right? Is this going to be like the rich kids get genetically modified and have great health outcomes? Everybody else, we're all stuck behind with the bad genes. And so, listen, I am pro science, and there's a lot of things that, I want people to be healthy. If we can make less suffering in the world, that's a good thing. But I think there's a line where, humans have been doing things a certain way for a long time. Babies made in love a lot of time. And that's part of the human experience. And so this just has me a little worried that we're leaving some of that.
I don't even know where to begin, man. Like, I think, we shared this, Mike Solana, Pirate Wire's great publication, kind of going full frontal on, who is this, Mehdi Hassan. There was an article, I don't need you to cure my blindness. Mike took a pretty strong take to the contrary, which is, given the choice, people would prefer to be not blind, right? And so what we've got here, Ben, is, last week we did Climate Conundrum. If you're a climate person, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, I don't even remember. There's been so much.
Kill the flower.
Ben was trying to genocide the flower in the Arizona desert for the rare earth minerals or for some rare rock. This week, what you've got is, I would imagine, a crisis of wokeness, which is, oh my gosh, wait a minute. We don't have disabled and we've differently abled or I don't even know all the words, but it's, where everybody is kind of perfect in their own special way. On the other side, you've got the crisis of religious folk saying, hey, this is all God's plan. Are we playing God? I mean, this, Ben, to me, is just such a perfect example of like the slippery slope argument of who is now going to decide what are the basket of things that are totally reasonable and like, yes, these are medically tragic and we should address, versus I'm disabled, Ben. I'm 5'6". I was told that CEOs are meant to be 6 foot. My earning potential is being held back. My IQ is fine, but imagine what I do with another 30 points, man. We'd be living high on the hog. And it's kind of hard to kind of say, well, are you condemning me to the permanent underclass with my vertical challenges and my mental mediocrity? I don't know where this ends, man.
Yeah, this is why, go watch Gattaca and then come back next week, leave your comments about what you think about Gattaca, and that answers this question.
Yeah. So this is I've been hearing about this for a while. There's the cloning guy out of China. I think he's a Chinese scientist who's cloning babies, who I think now has a lab in the United States. I could be wrong. We'll look into this. We'll get back to you. This is a story that's not going anywhere anytime fast. But what is certainly clear is that if we go down this route, Ben, the idea of allowing only the super uber wealthy Silicon Valley elites access to this type of embryo editing or gene editing technology is yet more fuel on the fire of the yawning wealth gap and the entrenchment of class difference in our society. We don't need gasoline on that fire. That fire is burning bright. This one, I think has me pretty concerned.
Reasonably so. So we'll continue to monitor that here and let you know what happens next.
All right, Ben, let's close that one out. So, we got any math this week? What have you been up to, Ben? What do you got for us? What's the Professor Ben special? Did you take anyone to school this week, Ben?
So, everyone knows in the Steam Zone, I'm an involved citizen, right? So I got an email from my assembly member. And everyone looking at my email, this is my personal email. My work one is Zero Inbox guy, but this one, it's personal, right? There's a lot of spam in there. So she's emailing me about opposing a fracking pipeline in Brooklyn. I didn't even know this was going to happen. Kind of seems cool, to be honest. I don't know. I get the risks, too. I don't know. The truth is, I have no idea. But what I didn't like was this kind of knee-jerk reaction, the NIMBYism of we're opposing this pipeline. I could be convinced that it's wrong. I'm not here to say oil all good and this is, I don't know, but I would love to see data. And what I didn't like was there was no data here. So I might have emailed my assembly member, as we see here, and I said, I'm a constituent, I'm abundance pilled. Can you let me know, what's the data here? Because this could be jobs, maybe cheaper energy. That seems good. Pro-environment, I want the environment to be protected, but what about the outcomes here? We got the automated response, but she responded, and give her credit. She's engaging. I appreciate the assembly person engaging with me and on email, so credit to her. But I just wasn't convinced by the argument, Noah. I don't know if you have any thoughts.
Give us the highlights. What was her response to you?
She was citing, that even though people say fracking is a transition fuel, she was really attacking fracking as a whole, but not this specific pipeline, right? And really, my response was, when I think about these problems, and there are huge environmental problems, I am not one. I don't know how to solve them. I'm not saying they're going to be easy to solve, but what I think about is this graph, right? And this isn't data produced by the Steam Zone, but from our friends at the Global Carbon Project. I don't know if they're our friends or not. So, but look at this, right? We're always coming back to China here on the show, right? Where these are global emissions from China. We're doing pretty going down in the United States. And so this has me, is a little pipeline in Brooklyn going to move the needle? I know small things add up. But I just am not convinced that we should just stop growth, stop progress. And it would be one thing if her email said, hey, I oppose this, but here's my plan for nuclear. Here are the 3 things I'm doing on nuclear to make sure we get nuclear power in New York, on Long Island, in deep Staten Island or Queens, or I don't know. I'd love to see a nuclear power plant in Manhattan. You've seen the, Battery Park City used to not actually exist. They filled in land there, Noah, and then they made that land. So let's extend Manhattan more and build a freaking nuclear power plant right next to Ellis Island. Let's get creative. But if people were there, that's what I don't like about the NIMBYism, right? Which is when you say no to something, which fair to say no, I want to see you come in with an alternative. Because having to do the alternative, that's where the hard work is done, right? It's easy to say no to stuff, but there is no perfect plan, and that's why you can always say no to stuff. But if you find a way to say no, but here is my plan, here's the positive way forward, and maybe that's, hey, we're not doing fracking, okay, but here's my nuclear plan. If you give me those details, then I can be convinced. But when it's just no, without a lot of data, it's tough for me to get on board.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's what it looks like to be an informed citizen. Ben Jacobson is an engaged constituent. I love that you took it to. I think you know what I love is the little back and forth. Unfortunately, it sounds like it's kind of political back and forth, which is that she kind of knew her talking points and wasn't about to go do research for you. It was kind of like, yeah, fracking bad. That's kind of where we're at. And that's how politics works. So, but good on you for stepping up, man. Stepping into the political arena. We love to see it. Challenge them a little bit. See what happens. I'll give a quick shout out here. Speaking of activism, speaking of New York City, was really excited, Ben, this past week. A really good friend of mine, a person I admire deeply, Pastor Corey Brooks from the south side of Chicago is the founder and pastor of New Beginnings Church. He's known as the rooftop pastor. He once camped out on a crack den motel for 94 days, trying to get him to shut that thing down. And then did it again for 365 days. He stayed on or maybe even more, might have been 390, on the rooftop through winter in Chicago. Famously, not the nicest of places. You've spent a few years in Chicago, living outside, trying to raise money to turn O Block, notorious O Block, once the most dangerous neighborhood in the city, into what he calls Opportunity Block, Opportunity Zone. He is a big-time empowerment guy. Pastor Brooks is starting a walk across America. It's going to kick off right here in New York City on September 1st on Labor Day in Times Square. He's going to be walking across the entire country to raise money for the center. He's trying to build workforce development, skills development, training, after-school programs. It's gorgeous, and it's a minor miracle that he's been able to raise even as much as he has. I think it's $25 million or something like that. They got to finish this center, and they got to do it debt-free. He is an inspiration. He is one of the most incredible community builders I've ever seen. He's also seen tragedy after tragedy after tragedy. He's buried more members of that community and presided over more funerals of young men than any human should have to, and that includes, folks during wartime. He is a really special person. So a special invitation, if you're a Steam Zone listener and you're here in New York, we'll be kicking that off with him on Labor Day on September 1st in Times Square. I'd love to have you out with us. And if not, if you're in another city, go check out projecthood.org. You can walk when he comes to your city. I highly encourage it. This is about our little civic action call to action today, Ben. This is about being an engaged citizen, being part of the change you want to see in your community. So shout out to Ben for going with the Assemblywoman, and shout out to Pastor Brooks for bringing folks out and really driving a transformation in his community. All right, with that, Ben, we are going to launch a new segment. We've been excited about this one. This is, ladies and gentlemen, you see jobs, you see opportunities coming at you through. I have a newsletter called Defense Tech Jobs. You may have seen that through the broader venture ecosystem. People are always pumping their companies. But this week we launch on the Steam Zone a little bit of a deeper look at some of these companies building the future in critical industries. And I'm very excited that our first job of the week is with an old friend, a Marine, and somebody you may have heard of before. It's Colin Carroll, the CEO and founder of Atropos Group. Let's welcome Colin to the program. All right, we are excited to welcome to the Steam Zone Mr. Colin Carroll, the CEO and founder of Atropos Group. Colin, you are kicking off a new segment for us today. We're doing Job of the Week here. Ben and I, the line between employment and unemployment is really, do your parents think you have a job? Some weeks the answer is yes. Some weeks we're hitting the jobs board. Colin, I want to talk to you because if this whole thing doesn't work out with the microphones and all, what do you got for a couple of non-technical folks over at Atropos Group?
Yeah, Ben, no, thanks for having me on. Let me give you a quick background about the company because your listeners are going to hear that name. They're going to be like, what is that? We don't know what that is. So Atropos Group or Atropos Group, depends on how you want to pronounce it, open to interpretation. We are a brand new dual use, so defense tech and commercial technology startup. Just finished a pre-seed in July, so we're super nascent. We're in the hiring process. At the meta level, we are working on clean sheet designing unmanned systems and autonomous systems and selling them to the department as a service and not as an end item. And then at the very specific level, we're working on a first unmanned aerial system product, a large unmanned aerial system product. And so, at the advice of my venture capital overlords, we are only hiring engineers right now. So for non-engineers, call me back in maybe December or January after a seed round. But on the engineering side, I know your audience is probably not, heavy engineers. So I'm going to talk to you about a role that we just advertised today that's called a senior operations analyst. So if you're a DoD person, you kind of know what an ops analyst does or an ORSA, an ops research analyst does. From our perspective, because we're spending private investment in designing and building and testing and certifying UAS and other unmanned systems and other domains, we have to get very good conviction in investing dollars in a product that we think the department will buy at some point in the future. And so an ops analyst comes in and basically looks at the threat, how the friendlies operate. They look at environment, and they work with the design engineers to ensure that we are designing a weapon system or unmanned platform that can actually meet the requirement that the DoD is going to have when this thing fields, which might be 7 to 10 years in the future. I think traditionally the department's done some ops analysis. Sometimes it's tied to weapon system acquisitions. In other cases, industry does it. Some of the big primes have whole teams, like the Lockheed Lighthouse team, that do this really well. But a lot of times, on the venture side, we're just we have a conviction or intuition, and we're kind of winging it and building something, and sometimes we wind up building the thing that the department won't buy, even if it might be the right thing. So in this case, the ops analyst is going to help our design engineers refine that requirement down, both for the mission and for the specifics of the platform. And then they'll move on to the next platform that we build, In addition to that, I think there's a whole shaping aspect to engaging the customer to ensure that they understand, hey, here's why we're making the trades that we're making on the platform. Here's how we see it fitting into the current mission and maybe adapting that mission in the future. Because some of the platforms that we're looking at, especially our first platform, they're going to be slightly weird for the department. These are platforms that don't fit neatly into, hey, this thing replaces an existing legacy platform. And so we'll have to do some shaping on that side.
Cool. So if I'm thinking about, maybe I'm at a cushy job at Google, things are going well, I get my iced latte in the afternoon and all the other massages and everything at Google, why would I want to come work with you?
Yeah, I mean, not going to pick out any one large tech company, but my wife worked at a large tech company. I kind of look at those as I call them country clubs. So if you're sick of the country club life, right, it's a good life, don't get me wrong, and some people want to enjoy that life. But if you're sick of it, you've been there for a couple of years, and you're like, man, I'm working 6 hours a day, I don't really see the results of my work in an impactful way. And if you want to join something that's potentially a little more risky, but also the reward is a little higher at the stage they're at right now, and you want a clean sheet design aircraft that both commercial carriers use to deliver cargo, and the defense community for use for other missions to include cargo, like, I think we're the right place. And we're hiring a whole team. We're well funded. I can't mention our investors, but these are tier 1 investors. We're well funded for a pre-seed, like really well funded for a pre-seed. Looking good going into seed. We're moving really quickly. I think Atropos Group would be a good place to look.
We know, a lot of folks, 101 is, you pick a job title. I think 201 is you start to think about who are the people that you're going to be working with. So for this role, you're talking about the senior ops analyst. Who is that person get to work? Are they working with you? Is there someone else on the team? Who should they be thinking about as the people they're going to be learning from, taking direction from, and hanging out with on a day in, day out basis?
Yeah, I think that a lot of times your ops analysts are seen as kind of the guys back in the cave, the girls back in the cave that have the access to classified systems, and they're running simulation, they're running, their analytics, and then it kind of like is just there in a vacuum, and then the engineers are off doing something else, or the requirement owners are off doing something else. I've seen that happen on the DoD side for quite a bit. I think where we're trying to approach the world is like, I need to get conviction, and my team needs to get conviction in investing dollars right now in a thing that might field in 5 or 6 years. And so we need to be super certain of exactly how that platform will be employed, where the risks are in that employment, both from a just operational perspective, but also a threat perspective, and then how can we mitigate those risks. And then that ties into the trades that the engineers are making on structures, propulsion, size of the aircraft, the entire aircraft design, to include what's happening like on the ground versus what's happening in the air. So the end-to-end, what we'll call a design reference mission. that ops analyst is going to be engaging heavily with the design team. So all the engineers I just mentioned, they're also going to be engaging heavily with the customer who actually has the requirement, but might not always understand. They might view the world through a lens of, hey, I just need a better horseshoe for my horse, and not, hey, I don't really need the horse, or I need something completely different from that. And here's how this plays in the larger kind of scheme of maneuver, concept of operations that the good guys are putting together.
Awesome. Well, I'm convinced. I'll have to get my investors to let me out of my role to apply, but we'll come back next time and figure it out.
Let's so Colin, before we let you go here, two quick hits. First off, what is that flamingo doing behind your shoulder? What relevance does that have to Atropos Group?
That's a story for another day, but there's a whole story behind the flamingo, and I think you're going to see flamingo in our logos and marketing, and if you know anything about me and my past, like, you'll see the flamingo littered back along the trail going back a decade. It's a different story.
All right. Well, we will
accept
have
the
you
job
back
to find out.
We will follow up on that story. It's a thread to be pulled. Your story and your path is another story, another thread to be pulled. Before we let you go here, Colin, what we do here on the Steam Zone, you got 30 seconds to blow off some steam. What's on your mind? What do you want to leave us with here today?
Yeah, I mean, I just came from the Department of Defense, and I've been in and out of the DoD. I came from the highest levels, working on budget resourcing. The steam I want to blow off is the acquisition process is so broken. I can tell you the team that's there now, it's a great team between the Senate Armed Services Committee and the House Armed Services Committee on the authorization side, the appropriators, the team in the building, the career civilians that have been there in A&S for a decade, in the services for a decade. I think that my read on that was, it was like triaging to the 5 or 6 things that we needed in order to win in the fight that we were looking at the time, in the theater we were looking at, trying to like knock those out and then move to the next 5 or 6 things. I think that acquisition reform, while noble, is not going to yield real results probably by the time that we actually have to go fight. And so that means we're going to fight with like basically the things that we have now, and then the things that private investment is going into that can move a lot faster than the acquisition process. And so, I would love to sell airplanes to the Air Force or boats to the Navy. I just don't see a realistic path to a program of record and a meaningful timeline where you're starting it from scratch. And so that's why we're going after the as a services model, which is, I'm going to build a fleet, and then I'm going to sell those as firm fixed price operating hours, or pounds per cargo delivered, dollars per pound of cargo delivered, and that's the model that we're going after. And so I'd love to try and fix the acquisition process, but I don't know. You gotta operate within it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing all that, and we'll start fixing the acquisition process next week.
It's been going for a while.
Colin Carroll, Atropos. I keep fucking butchering this. Not Atropos Group. How do you say it? Atropos?
Atropos Group, yeah.
Atropos Group. Atropos Group is the company. Ops analyst is the role. Check it out. We'll link to it in the show notes. Colin, thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Thanks, Noah.
All right, Ben. What do you think of Colin? Are you ready to take the jump to Atropos?
Yeah, I got to quit a couple of my jobs, my reserve job, this podcast, quit my real job, and then I'm signing up. But seriously, it looks like, exciting opportunity, and good to see smart people working in this ecosystem. Smart, hardworking, great people.
We look forward to having Colin back on to talk about his DoD exploits at a future time. All right, Ben, bring us home. It's your favorite time of day, baby. Blow off some steam.
So this one is, I kind of mentioned this before. We got the Cadillac team coming to the United States of America in March. This is a call to action. I was emailing my assembly person, but hey, we got to get behind this team. We cannot let F1 be a European sport. We didn't win World War II to let them win any sport. We got to win and dominate everything. So F1, we got to get behind Cadillac. I want to build a freaking superstar team, and I want to make sure we are the best. America should own F1 like we win at everything.
Big racing day. I actually didn't even know you were such an F1 racing fan. This is news to me. Other members of the Steam Zone have been following along. I didn't even know that my co-host here is such a fanboy. All right, now I know what to get you for Christmas. Well, here's what I got.
Hanukkah. We celebrate Hanukkah here on the Steam Zone. Come on.
Oh, boy. And Ben just torpedoed 98% of the American population. We are Christmas fans, too. We love Christmas. You could say Merry Christmas again. You don't have to fight us. All right, here's what I got this week, Ben. I want to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart, which is balance. And I got some steam for balance this week because I do believe that over the course of a life, if you want to, I grew up, you're supposed to be well-rounded. You do a little bit over here, a little bit of the extracurriculars, a little athletics, a little academics, a little family time, a little social time, a little bit of every bucket. And I think over a life, that's right. But what we're in this, this competition. We cover it extensively here on the Steam Zone, this Chinese geopolitical competition that we find ourselves in. Now does not feel like the time for balance. Now, we're not spring chickens. We're not 22. We didn't just graduate college. We're not entering to the workforce for the first time. But I'll tell you something, man. I am fired up. I got a fire in my belly. It's Friday night. We're here shooting the Steam Zone. We're grinding over the weekend. There's more and more startups are going 6-6-12 or 12-12-6, or I don't even know what the frick it is, but it's like you work all the time. And it doesn't mean that you're going to work all the time forever. But first of all, if you're trying to escape what the techies call a permanent underclass, which is this theory, it's once AGI is here, you're locked in. Your earning is done. You're locked where you are. If you haven't made it by then, you're going to be where you are forever. I don't know if I believe that. But again, why risk it? Why risk it? If you got a year or two to grind to secure your kind of future, it's not, of course, relationships matter, family, friends, these things matter. But if you've got that fire in your belly, then I think now is the time to rip it. We've got, one of my new favorite follows on Twitter. I don't know who this person is, Rachel, some whiskey person. I don't know anything about her. But she's got this tweet this week that I absolutely loved. And it was, just be unhinged. Just be unhinged. Terrorize normies. I love that. I think there's so much power in just being willing to be a little bit nuts, a little bit of outside the norm, to just zig when the other's zagging. Somebody else, everybody tells you you're supposed to do something and just asking why and then doing the opposite and seeing what happens. You don't always have to have a good reason for something. Yes, we like to start with why. We love Simon Sinek. But sometimes we just like to watch the world burn, Ben. And sometimes the world is your social plans on a Friday night. You just got to let it rip. So this is where I'm at. I think if you're at the phase of life where balance is calling, go for it. But if you're at the phase of life where you got that fire in your belly and you got that dog in you and that dog is barking and you want to be doing everything you can to escape the cycle of underclassmanship that you fear, or you want to do whatever you can to make sure that China doesn't take Taiwan in 2 years, freaking let it rip, man. Terrorize those normies.
Cool. Well, I'll be busy on Tuesday at 5, so don't book any recordings. But anytime outside of that, let's keep chatting next week.
I'm not sure. Fighting the fight from the comfort of our studio here is maybe not what we're talking about, but that's all right. That's all right. All right, man. That's a wrap. Big week. Geopolitical news aplenty. We'll do it again next week. Steam Zone.